Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur.
I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, marketing researcher, entrepreneur, and chief AI officer at Claritas. And this is Decoding AI for Marketing.
Yay, so much enthusiasm. I love it. Hey, Rex, listen, MMA has established that there's at least there's really there's three thing opportunities within AI, how it's impacting marketing, but there's two sort of main ones I think we're getting today. One is that it's focused on the efficiency bucket, right? Okay, like what are we doing to build efficiency? In fact, it's very funny. I had a call with a board member this week, and we asked them for their objectives of AI, and they said, I've asked my team to figure out how to remove $100 million from bottom line. I was like, wow, that's a big goal with AI. So interesting. But then, so besides efficiency, the other one is around the performance, right? And customer experience. I mean, the third one is crazy new business ideas. I don't know. We may get there with Wes. He could do that. Or I'm sorry, with our guest. I'm not supposed to say our guest name yet. But, but I've not heard anybody really going after number three. But I think when it comes to one and two, efficiency and performance, I think today's guest is about as good as it's going to get, right?
Well, and you've already let the cat out of the bag. We're talking to Wes Haar, and today's episode is going to focus on the areas that Greg just mentioned. So he has a company that he has helped to build, and they've come up with a number of tools to really improve their work, and we'll talk about them, plus some of the things they're experimenting with. But let's bring on Wes Haar.
Hey guys, thank you
Wes,
for the kind intro.
Yeah. So listen, you founded MediaMonks, correct? Yeah.
Yes, 23 years ago.
Okay. Where's the name come from? I meant to ask you that the other day.
I was very into the Wu-Tang Clan, so it's based on the 36 Chambers Shaolin monks. Not a lot of people know that, but that's the
Now they do.
that's the story.
Now they do.
That's the story.
I don't know that Rex, you would have guessed that.
I would not have guessed that. But the other one I've wondered about is you and I both have something in common. We both have worked for Sir Martin Sorrell. And
Yes.
so you eventually merged with S4 Capital Group, and you're now the executive director. Tell us about the business.
Yeah, no, we did that about 5 years ago. We'd grown MediaMonks into that sort of typical size where the networks and the consultancies come calling. We wanted.
Yeah.
Greg
Well,
knows how
listen,
that goes.
and by the way, just in case nobody's paying attention, you've been reading the public press. It turns out that the Sorrell is now being chased. In the past, he's always been the chaser. So that was I don't know if it's true or not. You don't have to comment, Wes, but it was in the Wall Street Journal, I think, this week or last week.
You have to love our industry's rumor mill. We went through that whole process with a bunch of the networks and consultancies. We're excited to both keep growing, but also try and put something a bit more disruptive in place. So being able to work with SMS, as we call him, Sir Martin Sorrell, who built the last, let's say, biggest version of the industry, and a proxy of that to try and build the next version of that disruption has really been the main goal. Decent run so far, but of course the AI element puts a whole new ingredient in the mix, and feels like a very interesting moment for a company like ours.
Yeah, and you guys have really doubled down, right? I mean, Wes, we've gotten to know you now here for a little bit. Rex and I have been working with you on some of their AI projects, but yeah, I mean, like you're betting the farm on AI, right?
Yeah, I think it's our industry sort of lives and dies by the hype cycle. So anytime there's one of these moments, we as a team always have to go through sort of a process. Number one, is it real or just a hype? And then if it's real, is it really happening right now? We did some very existential soul searching probably about a year and a half ago. And the answer to both was yes. And then if you know that that's happening, I think you're sort of obliged to try and be fast and first and do what's right for your own teams, do what's right for your clients. So yeah, we've been very either aggressive or ambitious, depending on your take on what's happening.
Yeah.
And you have a big.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Rex. Yeah.
You have a big thesis around customer experience and its importance, right? I mean, talk to us more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that what kind of I've talked to you a little bit about that. I mean, that's a big idea for you. I mean, that's the underlying dynamic of the thing, right? I love how you talk about that.
Yeah, like there's sort of two elements to it, and it's I think I've probably pitched the promise of digital advertising and digital experience for well over a decade, and it's always a version of personalization at massive scale, close to real time, high in context, sequential, and we have to be honest that just hasn't been delivered on, either from a technology perspective or from a consumer experience perspective, to the extent that I would wager a guess that digital advertising is the least liked advertising, if that's a spectrum we could even talk about. So the idea of having a technology that helps solve some of the speed and scale and spend issues of the global marketing org, to start doing digital advertising experience well, right? The idea that we no longer have to be tied to this sort of single big idea and hero asset, but we can do more creative. We can talk to more potential consumers in more meaningful ways, and we can be more in the moment. I think is really that's a big opportunity from our perspective. I also think there's a bit of an irony to the whole AI conversation. It allows us to make the consumer experience more human, right? The understanding and intent we can gather from people's interactions, our ability to sort of respond to that in real time with high relevance. It's a breakthrough moment for our industry.
Yeah. Wes, in some regards, it's kind of funny. It's sort of like, marketing, I think, has always been, listen, we're allegedly a culturally relevant business, right? We're supposed to be. But you're right in some level, like, we're supposed to be looking to the future. And I think we've all talked about it for a long time, but it does feel like maybe there's a greater potential for it to be here than ever. All those things we talked, personalization,
Yeah,
customer experience, helping
yeah. The
companies not to be so rude to their customers. I mean, yeah.
No, there a lot of the elements that have been in the promise of the ecosystem, I think, have been locked or blocked by our inability to either deliver that with people or technology. Like, you can't scale people to the level that you need to do, for instance, great community management. Right? There was this original promise of social, and a lot of it was about building communities and managing communities. Which brand does that at scale at the level of intent that you would actually want to do it? Nobody, right? So
Nobody.
these promises just break down at the level of scale that we're dealing with. And I think, and part of that scale is created by AI, right? We all get very excited by AI now because of Gen AI, but the digital marketing ecosystem and digital advertising has been an AI ecosystem for such a long time,
Hmm.
generating all of these touch points and connections and interactions, but we haven't been able to scale up the creative component, right? So all of this sort of reach has been scaled through AI, but we haven't been able to sort of almost solve the reach with merely us as humans. So I think it's AI solving AI to an extent.
Talk to me more about that part because you and I have been experimenting with personas and how those play a role. Is that part of it, or is it the workflow and the automation and streamlining? Is it both? Is it, how do you, what's your vision for how those pieces come together?
Yeah, it's a bit of a combination. I was having a chat earlier today about some of these use cases. So we, to your point, Rex, we're experimenting, or really we're sort of beta launched this idea of a persona, a proxy of a consumer, almost a digital twin of your consumer base, and the ability to gather massive amounts of data, put conversational interfaces on top of that, and have conversations with these digital twins of your consumer base in a way that actually is statistically relevant, right? It's sort of at the level of statistical relevance that you would get from qualitative or quantitative surveys. What is interesting there, and we're seeing it when great researchers or strategists use this type of interface, it unlocks completely different insights, and it does it at scale, and it allows you to experiment, and you can, instead of just reading something that gets delivered to you that's stale because it happened 3 months ago or 6 months ago, you're in the moment, and you're sort of figuring out what could be relevant because you're connecting it to social listening, and you're connecting it to your own campaign data. I think one of the it almost feels old school. I can remember Cannes 10 years ago being about big data, and every session was a big data session, but the idea of having, if not a thinking machine, philosophical conversation, at least a reasoning machine, be able to parse massive amounts of data in real time and unlock that strategists and creatives and researchers, I think is such a powerful moment. We recently used it for a company where massive global company that does a lot of interactions via their mobile app. We pulled all of their app store reviews through LLM workflow with an LLM taught to look at the product reviews as a product developer and a sort of a program manager for a product, and then use that to influence the product design and meaningful impact, right? Much better app store ratings, driving up conversion. If that would have been manual, we would probably have gotten to 10% of that data in a meaningful way, or maybe 20. So it's really powerful. It's
Right.
really powerful.
And Wes, the project that we're talking about here that Rex is referring to that we're all working on together here, the MMA too, and hope to bring to a bunch of our market members is basically to take sort of to collect enough information to be able to do the research you would do that would take months to do
Yeah.
and to condense that into hours.
Yeah,
So
we have the pithy line from 3 months to three prompts.
there you go.
And
Okay.
but honestly, that is,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about AI. Sort of, it's a collapsing function, right?
Yeah.
It collapses time, it collapses silos, collapses team structures. It brings things just closer together. And yeah, persona, which I'm super excited that we're working on
It,
together. I think is really really cool.
yeah, really cool. And we're, Rex has been a big advocate with the MMA and the members here around sort of the concept of agents, which is, I think, a variation of the digital twin personas. I'm using that right. Somebody, correct me there. But I think also too, I guess the only issue is that whether or not it's going to give us the accurate insights. And I think that's, we don't know where we are on that yet, do we, gang? Yeah, I mean, Rex, that's even a
There's
question for
some,
you.
yeah,
Do we?
there's some research. I mean, the,
Mm,
uh, I think what Wes said is right, which is it's really how it unlocks insight within a person. So we did some research with Syracuse University and students, and the AI, built on their personas. People rated it as, "Wow, this is really close to me. It really knows
hmm
me. It's scary how
Yeah.
well it knows me." But then when we asked the persona, how would you buy Sour Patch Kids? It said, well, people would take ethical considerations and they would think about their health and whatever. Like, no, they just care about the taste and it's candy. They're eating it. And so it hadn't fully learned behavioral economics, and people aren't always what we hope to be, that there's this gap. Now, you probably can train it and fine tune it, but we probably have a little bit of work to do. But what it did so well was it unlocked insights about the role of nostalgia in our own stories and our families and how we use it, remembering it as kids or sharing. And that, for a professional reading that, really engaged people in seeing something that maybe they wouldn't have seen if they had just done a focus group. And so I found that exciting. Even if the data wasn't perfect, like you said, it unlocks for the strategists more ways of thinking about it in a much faster time. Would you agree with that, Wes, or would you take it to a different direction?
No, I agree. It and that's, I think, such a huge part of it. Like, as humans, we are forced to skim the top of all of the information that's sort of available to us. And I think this gets you to more information faster, and the right
Yeah.
strategists and researchers are just getting to much more interesting insights and directional ideas a lot quicker.
Yeah.
It's really quite cool to see people use it in that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, we're in the early phases. Let's not kick it out yet. Let's just gotta keep going and to figure that out and what we need to do. And basically, I think at some level too, how do I mean, a couple of things. Do we have the right data set? And do we have the right way of asking those prompts? Is sort of a big issue. I went through an exercise. I was trying to do something this morning with it, and oh man, it just would make. I thought I was giving it the best information, and that ChatGPT would come back with just horrendously wrong orientation to what I was trying to do. But that was me not knowing how to talk to the machine.
Yeah, we're launching interesting prompting project with a client. I think 4 days from now. But yeah, it is. We did a lot of research for that. The idea of it being a new language, and it's important to understand how that language works and why it works in certain ways. So yeah, that's there's progress to be made there.
Mhm.
Yeah, working with Professor Beth Egan at Syracuse, she's her takeaway from the research that we did with her was if we gave it the attitudes and usage survey that the brand already has, or if we gave it the brand deck and it started off with that set of a knowledge, then it should be able to actually give you much better answers. And that falls into a
Oh,
category called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And you guys, Wes, are doing a lot with RAG, right? I mean, you're using, my company's Claritas's data as a core set. You're talking about product reviews. You're tapping into social media listening. Talk to a little bit about how you're thinking about that RAG workflow or maybe new innovations to make all that data work together.
Yeah, it's honestly it's this unlock for the LLM technology. I think there was a lot of early weirdness in the agent landscape, and I'm not sure if you remember some of the articles that hit the New York Times when Bing launched their AI sort of interface, um, where the journalist talked. I think Sydney was the internalized
Sydney,
name of
yes,
the
Sydney.
and I think Sydney tried to get him to divorce his wife after like a 4 hour conversation. So
Well, it was a
that
pretty
that's
cool journalist. You could understand why Sydney would be attracted to that journalist.
Wait,
Sydney
was
has
Sydney
good
trying to
taste.
take over the relationship? Is that what happened?
Sydney wanted him to
Yeah,
leave his wife and run away with her or whatever. Yes. I think that really is
it's the
what it
reason.
was. But it's probably the
Yeah,
way he was being prompted, right? But back to your weirdness thing. I like this. Go for it. Continue,
yeah,
Wes.
well, that's the thing. The length of that conversation was part of it. It's why the conversations are a little shorter now, Ming. But also that put into the landscape the concept of hallucinations, right?
Yeah,
And I think a lot of brands, a lot of marketers are very worried about the hallucination piece.
yeah,
But the ability to combine LLM as a technology with RAG, to Rex's point, the ability to actually go to structured data, almost similar to how you would query a database, gives you a best of both worlds solution. It gives you the actual information connected to the ability to have a conversational interface. And that conversational interface can use that real data through the lens of a personality trait or be briefed to think about the world in certain ways, but uses the actual data through that lens, which is Rex, and you're very into this as well. But to me, is like such a massive change that I often feel it's a little undervalued in the landscape. I don't think people completely know that that's now sort of how you think about these moments. So yeah, it's massively powerful, massively powerful.
hey, Wes, you've kind of gone after two, I think, there within Media Monks. All right. You guys have created a thing called Monks Flow. Is that what it's called? It's sort of relooking at some of your
Yeah,
workflow. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
yeah. We launched that at CES this year. It was interesting. So when we went through our own transformation and we're still on that path, we look very different now than a year ago, but we will have to look again very different 2 years from now, I think, to still be relevant. The um the real takeaway was our initial instinct was let's train our talent on a bunch of this new amazing technology, and magically it will make us more productive. That didn't really happen. A lot of the landscape is sort of point solutions. A lot of it isn't quite ready for prompt to output, and that output is perfect to use. So the first wave for us was a bit disappointing, to be honest,
Hmm.
which changed our way of thinking, which is this is a workflowing exercise. What's the input, what's the output, and what are the 5 to 500 steps in between, and where can we use automation or AI to not fully replace a person, but limit the amount of manual labor by sometimes 30%, sometimes 80%, right? If you're doing translation, you're at 80%. If you're doing maybe storyboarding, or you're doing maybe some of the versioning, that's sort of the norm in digital advertising, maybe it's 30 or 40. And we started building that out internally, and then really got to the point that we were noticing a lot of clients had similar issues within their organizations. So we opened it up as an external product. um, Really fun and sort of strange moment, because companies like ours are, I think, often a version of slightly controlled chaos,
Hmm.
and sometimes slightly uncontrolled chaos. So it's forced sort of more systemic thinking about, okay, what is actually that workflow, and where can we be smarter, and where can we collapse, and where is there a completely different way of thinking about the work, which I think has been really good. it's been really fun. But yeah,
And
it's
so,
a
what's the
workflow
outcome of
automation
yeah,
solution.
what's the outcome of Monk's Flow at this point? What do you know? I mean, what would you validate? Or, well, what might you? I mean, ultimately, what I want to get to, like, what lesson have you learned that's really helpful to everybody else in trying to figure this out?
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is this isn't about having a few of your people be a little more productive within an interface. It really is, how do you orchestrate your talent with the machines and models? So how do you still have talent make, for instance, we'll use digital advertising as an example, make the hero asset, but then hand it off to a model to make 5,000 versions of it. And then, of course, you want people in the loop before it goes out to market. But it's more of a handoff currently, and I think that's actually a really nice way to think about talent and machine. So yeah, it. You have to fundamentally change how you work is the real takeaway. And the mental exercise we went through was really, if you would start MediaMonks tomorrow, or not tomorrow, it's Saturday, Monday. If you would start MediaMonks again on
No,
Monday,
you're an agency. You're a service business. You can start on Saturday. That would be right. Yeah.
it's it's probably a Saturday job.
Hmm.
Like, what would it actually look like, right? If you would start it tomorrow, and I
Yeah.
think everybody, looking at the technology that's already there and the progress of the technology and where it's going, every company that would ask itself that question would do something different than they're doing now.
Yeah.
Which means you also need to ask yourself the question: what happens if somebody else actually does it differently,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
What's our
What's your
what
business?
happens to us?
What's your risk exactly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you
it's
better
it's a
disrupt
massive.
yourself. That's right. You better
Yeah.
disrupt yourself. I think it's interesting also your point for the agency world and for marketers as well. I've found the experiences that they tend to be more creative thinkers that are able to organize that what they need to do strategically in their mind, almost somewhat intuitively. And the challenge is that to be effective with AI, you have to go back to a workflow. If you happen to be an engineering or a data geek like me, it ends up being a little bit easier because you already think in terms of a sequential step. Maybe you're already using Jira and you have a workflow of steps and items going on, and then you begin to say, well, where could we flip and put AI in there, or how would that workflow change? But if that's a new mindset for you to think in terms of, I mean, if you go from being a chef who invents something by opening up the refrigerator versus someone who actually pulls up a recipe card and says, okay, these are the ingredients, these are the steps, this is the process. So tell me a little bit about, in an agency world surrounded by creative people, how did you get them to begin to think in that systemic way? Did you use something like Jira? Did you use something else to create that workflow? Talk about that transformation.
Yeah, and we've always been an interesting combination between sort of creative and tech. So we have a lot of ways of working that are quite structured. But to your point, the process of creativity is more instinctive, or at least we treat it as more instinctive. So it every team in our organization got a brief, which is, if you start tomorrow, what do you think it should actually look like? Way of working, team composition, what talent are you missing? And then we have our AI transformation team, which I run, works with those teams and helps them workflow it, which we then translate to these monks flows that we have internally.
And Wes,
And a lot of that,
you did that for each department. You asked them to assess their own department about what they would do different if they started today.
yes, although we prioritize based on the sort of, where is this impacting first. So we're still
Okay.
going through that, but of course it was going to impact first in our transcreation business. So that's
Okay.
completely through the looking glass. We've replaced 80% of translation with machines. 80% of human translation is machines now. Studio and content at scale, and digital advertising at scale, and performance, those are clearly very closely connected. We have some elements. Copywriting is a clear one. Anything in sort of image or film production is very close. But we have a whole roadmap of um, areas where our business is going to be impacted on a timeline. And of course, we're hoping we're right with the timeline. We've been decent so far. So we still have work to do, but that's how we went through it and are still going through it.
What do you think's last on that list, by the way? Can you look down the road? or
Yeah,
was it near
it's
the end?
interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I selfishly I would of course go, well, the my role is impossible to replace by AI.
Executive
Uh,
management.
I
yeah,
think that I
executive
think that
management. I think that
The last
that will be
person to
the
turn off
takeaway
the
for many
light.
companies.
Hey, Wes, I'm gonna go with, let's go with just you're right on that one, okay? Because I might put
Well,
me
we
in
are
some.
trying to make a virtual Greg. Did I tell you about this, Wes? We've enlisted his daughter, and we're gathering all of his
Oh, my
recordings,
records.
including this one here, and
Mhm.
we're going to see if we can replace Greg. We'll see if the board meeting runs without him with a virtual Greg. We probably won't go that
The-
far, but the idea of it just being there to be able to help you identify your blind spots, put together your board
Yeah,
agendas faster, get the notes together, and make sure there's follow ups. I mean, just that time savings
Time
just as
savings,
an
yeah.
augmentation is huge. I mean, it's exciting to hear what you guys are doing. Are you doing anything like with the knowledge management across the board now that you have AI permeating so many parts of your organization?
yes, knowledge management. I think it's actually SMS Sorrel's I think use case that he focuses on a lot is that idea that you can get all your people synced on what's actually happening and where it's happening. And he, of course, in his previous life had the sort of sprawling empire of WP, where that was always, of course, frustrating, right? Where you don't know what you don't know. So somebody's
Mhm.
working on something that's already solved somewhere else. So we're doing a lot of work on how we solve those issues, even though it's at smaller scale within our organization. I think part of the I'm just thinking through like what goes last when it comes to this. Like what I've seen that I think is really fun is a lot of the grassroots innovation that's happening within our organization comes from creative teams, because I think good creatives tend to be curious and they want to figure things out. So we haven't seen a lot of anxiety where I feel that sometimes at the industry level, Cannes last year it felt very sort of anxious about AI, but we've actually seen creatives be amazing. I also think creatives, it unlocks more for them, right? They can get more stuff done with fewer dependencies. So I think it actually puts creative leadership and creatives in general, maybe, yeah, I think they become more important because they'll be able to get more from the tools and technology, because this is a creative technology, right? That's sort of the interesting moment where it's amazing technology, but through the lens of generating things that we normally see as creative output. So I think that it actually makes those roles more important, especially for people that use the technology well. Like there's interesting conversations around things like client management and project management, where on the one hand you can imagine being able to do a lot of that with support from the machines really well. Do people want that? Like you see stories
Mm.
about customer service at scale being done not just by machines, but being done better by machines. But we're such a high touch industry that I can imagine that that is just like that just feels like a breaking point, I think. So it's probably those high touch client interaction moments between account and client leadership and creative leadership where I think you want those people to be really good with the technology, but our clients aren't
Augmented.
interfacing with the technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the augmented salesperson is probably one of the latest people
Yeah.
to go because they're that human touch, but that you can bet that they're using AI to help score, draft their emails, stay on top
Mm.
of communications. But it's still they're sort of the manager of their AI agents. That
And
would be my
so
bet of one of the latest ones. But it's interesting the creative part. What do you think it means for a junior creative person? Because what you described is kind of the perfect thing for a senior creative person who
yeah.
wants to get more done and can use AI to do it. How does someone come up in the ranks now if you're talking to someone who's coming out of college or just starting their career?
Mm.
Hey, Wes, can we
Uh,
put something in context too? We had somebody on the on one of the earlier episodes, and they talked about Rex. Do you remember how he talked about that? He said they don't think that AI can get too creative because it can only do what's already been done, and so therefore those are all ideas already established, and they can't go to new and different.
Yes, I do remember that one, and we had a
Yeah,
good debate about whether that would be
yeah.
true or not. What do you think, Wes?
I find it, I just find like there's a history when it comes to AI of very smart people saying the thing I do is so special,
Yeah.
AI will never be able to do the thing I do. And I recommend everybody to have a watch of the AlphaGo documentary on YouTube, where DeepMind, which is pretty much now Google's AI team, builds a machine that defeats one of the best Go players in the world.
Hmm.
And the hubris is very recognizable.
Yeah.
Same messaging. This is a human activity. It's not like chess. A machine will never be able to have the intuition and the inspiration and the emotional smartness to play this game and win. And the guy gets washed. Doesn't stand a chance. But it's like looking at a nerdy version of Khan. You're like, I recognize all of these talking points. So my take is, I wish I let me say it, I hope that's true. That'd be amazing if that's true. I just don't know what it's based on.
Wait, which is
I
true
think
though? Which position did you take though? That's
well,
true that AI could never be as good as creatives, or
no,
that creatives are can or AI can
well,
do creative?
yeah. If somebody says AI will not replace creatives or creativity, let's say AI will not replace human creativity, I think that's a beautiful thought, and
Mhm.
I would want it to be true, because that means our creativity is something
It's
extremely
something
special.
special, right? The
I
humans
just
are
don't know
special,
what.
right?
Yeah, I just don't know what that's based on. I
Yeah,
think
it's based upon
it
hope, but
And
not
it
on
dep
yeah.
and it
not on
depends.
fact. But what about the junior person coming up? I mean, what's your advice? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
hearing reports from some of my family and friends that there are people who are graduating college with degrees, top of their class, and the best job they can get is flipping burgers at In-N-Out. Real story. Someone I think from UC Davis
Yeah.
told me that one.
Yeah.
Is that yeah? So how does a young person come into your organization and add value? Um, what would be
Yeah.
important for them?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that at an industry level, I 100% worry about junior roles. I think because a lot of the time our industry brings in junior people to do junior things, and they're lower on the pyramid from sort of the quality of the complexity of the work, and that's where a lot of AI impact already is available. So I honestly do worry about this industry pulling through a new sort of generation of junior talent. When I look at it, I see a lot of our junior hires are hires we do because they're already, if you can be AI or Gen AI native, right? So I've young strategists that live in LLMs, but they lived there before we as a company were really thinking about it at that level.
Wow.
And I have creatives that have been in prompting interfaces for years and years and years, and have a way better instinctive feeling of how that works and where that goes. So I think the concept of seniority becomes interesting, because if
Mhm.
seniority in part is experience and information, AI can guardrail a lot of that. So you can also flip it and go, is a 21 or 22-year-old that's completely native to what's happening, uh, can that person operate as a senior because all of the history and information and guardrails of experience are available within the workflows?
Wow, that's an exciting
Um,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's I
That
just
was
think
kind
the
of how the
concept.
internet was in the early days
I was
too, right?
just gonna
The
say, it
seniors,
feels
right?
like when we yeah, back when we were in our, 30s and 40s and we took over the world because we understood it in a way that the senior execs weren't
Yeah,
willing to do. There's not that resistance that there's not resistance to new like there was then. Remember that, Rex? Oh my
Yeah, I
god,
mean,
I
I was
had
2025 reporting to Sir Martin Sorrell, only because there was a gap between me as a 25-year-old and the
yeah.
people that could transform the
yeah,
internet.
and people
Yeah.
said some of the dumbest things back in the internet age about what they would or wouldn't do and what they thought the world was gonna be, and it was just totally I'm hoping we're kinda past that now generally. I don't hear people willing to be that vocal about being stupid anymore, but
No, I think everybody sort of has a feeling of where it's headed. But yeah, I agree. It feels like a similar moment. It feels like a similar moment.
Mhm.
We'll see at what level,
Mm.
right? On the one hand, it sometimes feels like a bigger moment, but it
Bigger than what internet was?
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
right.
Hundred
I think
hundred
that's
percent
absolutely right. Yeah.
hundred
yeah,
percent Just as mobile
yeah,
I mean, listen, mobile took what I think we missed about the internet and the trends on this stuff is that, internet was very restricted to people who could afford a $2,000 computer. and $100 a month in internet, whatever, high speed, whatever the charges were, right? But when mobile took and gave that access to billions, I mean, literally billions, was just
Yeah.
astonishing in the scale and how fast business could be built. This has to be an extension of that. Hey, Wes, I have a funny question for you. I don't know if you have an answer to it, but I've asked this a lot. We've talked about this at the board level. What is the killer app here? Like, I don't think we've seen it yet. Like, Uber was, I think, in retrospect, a killer app for mobile. I mean, that's maybe
Yeah.
somewhat debatable, but it's an indicative of a killer app. What is the killer app here in AI? Have we seen it yet?
No, it's like that's the weirdness of the technology to an extent, because these sort of large language models, the, you can use them for so many things that it almost becomes difficult for people to understand what it does for them.
Mhm.
I've seen these fascinating threads internally in our company where people are sharing use cases like, what do we use it for? And anything is there, right? People are using it to help them play better Dungeons and Dragon
Yeah. Yeah.
games, or a better Tinder profile,
Yeah.
and literally everything in between those two concepts. So it's, I think this idea of having a reasoning machine that can do things for you in ways that are still sometimes a bit difficult to understand is such a vague concept that it it is in and of itself a killer app, but it doesn't feel like a killer app,
Yeah.
because everybody sort of has to go through almost an onboarding of what does it do for me.
Mhm.
It'll be really interesting also because honestly the agent store on OpenAI hasn't really popped yet. Like there was a lot of excitement around them opening almost the idea of like
Mhm.
the app store moment for
Yeah.
LLMs.
Yeah.
Hasn't really worked. So there's this moment where you're waiting for something that drives the next billion downloads.
Right.
Um,
Right. And what we
I
didn't
don't
see with
know.
mobile, that it was gonna put phone calls out of business. I mean, that's what we did.
Yeah,
That's the funny thing.
The mobile phone,
like
putting the phone out. Yeah, it
Mobile
did.
phone book calls out of business. Who does a call
like
anymore? I don't know.
I think it wouldn't surprise me if the killer app sits in the commerce space. The idea of having like completely personalized e-commerce.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, and it gets a bit speculative, right? But if you think about commerce now, it already feels antiquated that I have to go somewhere, I have to search, and I have to compare prices, and I have to put it in a basket. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
just
agree.
think that
I'll take
is
that.
massively antiquated. So I think an agent-based interface, and I think the rumor is that ChatGPT 4.5 or maybe 5 will give agents access to that type of personalized, uh, go do this for me type
Mm.
brief. I think that's a killer app, right? Where I can just go, hey, look for
W
these things, come back to me, and I'll make a decision in my sort of agent interface. I think that might be
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
that's
you're
the
right.
killer
100%
app.
right.
I
We
think that's
we
right.
that's part
We
of our
asked the guys.
training, right? I mean, you get to I mean, that's what we do on the fifth day is get people hands on with agents. The agent reasoning, to your point, will get better. It's kind of a little bit
Yeah.
flaky right now. Like I gave it last year after the Kroger training. I had a late flight. The session was over early. I'm like, well, what should I do if I've got 6 hours in Dallas? And here are some of the things I like. And gave me a session for what I could do for the next couple of hours. So it can do real basic stuff. I think you're right that's going to be the big leap is this explosion. I was trying to plan a vacation because I haven't taken one in a long time, and it felt like so much work trying to go on YouTube and see, where do I want to go? I want to go on hikes. Do I want to do this one? Where should I stay?
Painful.
How long does
Yeah.
it get there? Whatever.
Painful.
It felt like work, and I'm like, it's supposed to be a vacation. I'm just going to keep working. Forget the vacation. But when an agent can do that for me, maybe I'll take the vacation.
Yeah. Hey, Wes, we asked Rex and I had a Google evangelist on AI talk in one episode, and we asked him to kind of it's a stupid question, like, what do you think's the one thing, whatever. But he didn't hesitate. He said personalization.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Well,
what we're
and
craving for, I want the company to talk to me personally. I don't wanna have a goddamn chatbot. I hate chatbots. I think they're just the dumbest thing that was ever created. They're beyond annoying. I can't believe we even sort of foster that on people, and we think somehow we're doing our job with consumers. It's just insane. So, like, make it work, everybody.
yeah, and I think the idea, we're actually in a few projects where clients where AI can drive such a level of context and personalization that yeah, it becomes such an elevated customer experience through that. But I do think it'll be like it'll be super interesting if you think about the people probably listening to this podcast. That there's a lot of change about to happen when you think about customer experience, customer journeys, digital advertising.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
depending on how quickly you believe some of this thing will scale to the normal consumer base, it looks very very different than a few years from now.
Yeah. 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 Do you, Wes, what else are you guys doing interesting that you've seen within your company? I mean, let's, so, listen, just to anchor for the listener, like, you guys are going to foster innovation. You're trying to solve many clients for many, marketers and their connection to consumers. Like, anything else really interesting you guys are doing besides, the monk flows and some of the other stuff? Yeah.
Well, AI specific, just really great creative work. We did a big campaign for Burger King recently, probably biggest creative Gen AI campaign I've seen so far, where people got to make their own burger, but crazy burgers because of Gen AI. We had tuned the model on the Whopper. And the output is amazing. Like it's so fun. And actually, to your point about personalization being the killer app, it unlocked some, I would almost say, old school digital behavior. Like people were sharing their personalized burger at a level that I just haven't seen over the last 5 or 6 years because people are sort of
Mm,
over that. But we gave them so much flexibility that it almost re-engineered some of that joyful early internet behavior.
mm,
And as a bit of a old school person in that space, I thought that showed the power of personalization, right?
mm.
Instead of sort of this very narrow space, this open space. So I love that piece of work. I think the company as a whole, quality of the work is really fun to follow. We're doing big, uh, mostly sort of marketing operations transformation work for clients at this moment. I think just a lot
Mm.
of clients that are looking at their org going, we need to fundamentally change how we work. And that I like that because you get it's a C-level conversation. You're part
Yeah.
of the sort of strategic intent of an
Yeah.
organization. It's technology, it's creative, it's operations. Like those big meaty conversations. We're getting pulled into a lot of those at the moment, and it feels like it just feels like a lot of brands are looking for a bit of a change, which is fun.
Hey, Wes, back to the very beginning here, and then maybe I think, we'll probably listen. This has been great. I really love this conversation. I love every time I talk to you. I feel like I learned something new. I have a new perspective on the world. So, listen, we set this thing up and saying there was basically sort of two main things, efficiency and performance. We've talked about both of those today in terms of kind of the things that they're sort of upon the things that we're doing now, but with different iterations. And I like the way you've internalized that to get the company to really try to think differently. Have you seen any new business models though by chance? Have you seen anybody transforming the product completely and that the company's becoming very different or even a glimmer of that at this point? I don't know that I have.
Uh, No, it's a bit early. I think
Yeah.
you have
Okay.
Sam Altman with the talking point that the first one-person billion-dollar company is less than a year or two away. So this
Hmm.
idea that a single person could
That's been a,
scale a business,
that's
and
been a trend. Fewer people building bigger, more valuable businesses. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
so I think there is that moment where we'll, especially if the agent landscape sort of matures, I think we'll see
Mm,
people be able to do things at scale
mm,
that we just haven't seen before. I think that to end it on a low, I think scammers are innovating. My
that's
partner in the
unfortunate.
business, my partner in the business, he actually posted this on LinkedIn a few days ago. We had an MD of ours in Asia Pacific who got a call from a fully AI generated colleague of mine to quickly wire over money for something. It
Oh,
wasn't
he actually
quite
got the call from, yeah, it was a voice call. Is that
video. No, that's the thing. The interesting they
uh
they had taken existing video, trained on the voice specific model, and then did lip syncing on the video. Um, it wasn't quite there, but then I'm lucky that our teams are quite digitally savvy. But I was like, oh, okay. billion
Yeah,
dollar
wow.
idea, if we're talking about product development, human to human authentication is going to be, that's the next $1 billion
I think
idea.
Sam's doing
Right,
that
yeah.
too, isn't he? Isn't Sam doing that?
He was trying to do
Mhm.
that with the eyeball. Yeah, get your retina
Mhm.
scanned
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that I think that you're right, the authentication identity, and that's why I'm so concerned about GDPR and the US states chasing the last problem. I mean, they're chasing privacy, and it's like, are you? And I'll keep it clean. Crazy. Uh, I want to say
There's a
something different because you are not looking at where things are going, and where they're going is we need authentication, we need identity, we need to
yeah,
be able
yeah.
to control our privacy and our data, but do not
Mm,
take away all the information and all these signals that we have to know what's
mm.
real. Yet that's what we're doing, isn't it? So there's the
Wow.
first
Yeah,
billion dollar idea. Thank you, GDPR. We will now scam all your money from North Korea.
yeah. Well, but that's honestly, it's a great point, right? It's we've tried to solve the privacy problem, which to a large extent got created by the previous generation of algorithms and AI. But the next generation of algorithms and AI needs a different solve, and it's
Yeah,
less about
yeah.
privacy and it's more about authentication. And yeah, that I honestly worry about that. I think the both legislation and technology and media literacy maybe is in a bad spot when it comes to
Yeah.
the technology that's there. So yeah, that if there is a few $1 billion businesses ready to launch, it's very much in those spaces because that's going to be yeah an a high necessity. Maybe that's an AI killer app, right? Maybe there's AI to solve AI problems is a recurring theme when we
Mhm.
talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you think's overhyped? To give you kind of a last question before we wrap up, is there anything that you see that you think is completely overhyped and people are too excited about something that's a flash in the pan?
Um, like I think it's very difficult to be overhyped by the space as a whole. I think it's amazing.
In
I
the in the
think
in the long run, absolutely. In the long run, that
yeah,
we
in the
can't
long run.
overhype it. Yeah.
I think overhyped. It probably things like, and I say this, um, telling you that I was extremely hyped when I saw it, like something like a Sora, which I think is an
Mhm.
amazing breakthrough.
So amazing.
Amazing, like unheard of. I saw it on a Friday night, and I had a few extra drinks when I saw it. The the takeaway is prompt to output. It's not quite there yet, right? It's very
Yeah.
difficult for brands to go prompt to output. So what's the granularity of changes that you can make, feedback? So I think some of the elements that are overhyped, especially for the enterprise brands, is it's amazing that it's possible, but do you have enough control and ability to implement feedback? And that's where it's almost a gap between amazing research projects and enterprise usability, right? There's a
I
gap.
love that point. I was working on a slide for Greg's possible conference coming up, and I was trying to show an AI robot building another robot being built by another AI robot, and I could not do it. I tried Gemini, I tried GPT-4, I tried the old Dolly Lab stuff. I didn't try Firefly from Adobe. I think I might have been able to get it there because I think they probably have the most control right now. But it was
Yeah,
so frustrating that you can't quite get there yet. But yeah, I think that you nailed it. That's a good one in terms of exciting, but not quite there yet.
I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
non high speed internet stage, right?
yeah.
14.4,
It's
yeah.
you
Fourteen
can
four
hear the
modems.
dial-up sound.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can
14.4,
hear
yeah,
the dial-up
14.4
sound all the
modems.
Yes.
Yeah,
time.
exactly. You can hear the jangly sort of that jangly sound, whatever was connecting.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's where we are. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
the
And on that note,
I,
yeah, go Wes, last word for you, and then we'll wrap up.
well, amazing chat. Always enjoy, and looking forward to seeing you at possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's a good example. We're in the early stages. I think the timeline is just massively compressed, so we'll
yeah.
probably go from low bandwidth to high bandwidth in a much shorter time frame
Uh,
than we did with the internet.
there's a word for that's what we get from being a little bit. That's the only thing we got a little bit older is a little bit of pattern recognition. It's going to go faster. Everybody get strap in and get ready. Let's go. Yeah.
And on that note, that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart.
Be sure to catch all our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can get transcripts and more information on our website, decodingaiformarketing.com. And to learn more about the MMA and membership options, go to MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening.